So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We've got an audience from all across North America, and it is so nice to have you in for such an exciting session. Now, I know we've got some new faces in the crowd today, and so if you are new to us, we are exploring by the seat of your pants, and we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, my name is Jesse. I'm going to be your virtual adventure guide today for a really exciting and one of our most unique kinds of programs here as an organization. So, over the last 5 years, we've been partnering with Ocean Wise. They are based in Vancouver, British Columbia, one of the loveliest cities on this planet. And what they do is educate the public about the oceans, how important they are, from everything from marine plastics to cleaning up litter to saving species, everything to do with the seas on this planet. They help educate the public on that. So I'll make sure you have this link at the end of the broadcast to keep that learning going. Now with them, we've talked about coral, we've talked about whales, we've talked about sharks and penguins and so much more. But today, we are going to dive in with cephalopods, one of the most unique and amazing groups of creatures on this planet. And particularly, we're going to do a squid dissection together. Now, a lot of our students today are really young. Typically in grade 11, you get to do your first dissection in school. So you guys are getting a pretty special opportunity if you're a little younger to join us for this very special program. We're going to learn a lot about it, what dissections are all about, why it's so important to be respectful, and so much more. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friend, one of my favorite educators we ever have on the broadcast, Daphne, joining us from Ocean Wise. Daphne, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. I'm super excited to join you all today. And as Jesse said, I'm Daphne. I am an educator with Ocean Wise. And if you aren't familiar with Ocean Wise, we are a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to empower communities and individuals just like you to take action and protect and restore our world's oceans. So we hope and we have a vision for a world in which our oceans are healthy and flourishing. So I'd love for all of us to take a quick moment to close our eyes and imagine what a healthy and flourishing ocean looks like to you. I'm sure we've got lots of amazing ideas. Maybe we see lots of animals, hopefully lots of other life as well, like sponges and algae and kelp, lots of other life that we're going to see. But you know what, my friends? We at Ocean Wise know that there are a lot of challenges that the ocean faces. So I'd love to hear maybe a few ideas of some challenges you think the ocean faces.
Absolutely. So we'll ask some of our classes. By the way, Daphne, we have a group in Accra in Ghana joining today on YouTube, which is very exciting. So it's more than just North America. We're truly international today. Mr. Shadid's class, some of our ocean thoughts. Come on in, Chalk River. Hi.
Pollution.
Pollution, one of our threats facing our oceans. Any others that jump to mind? I can head to another class, or do you have another thought? No, pollution is our first one. Okay, awesome. Way to go, guys. Let's head to Miss Kennedy's class. What do we think? If you want to unmute your mic, you can keep those mics unmuted. Any threat facing the ocean?
She's coming.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Pollution, great. Miss Edie's class, North Carolina, our global explorers, trash thrown in the ocean. So litter, garbage, pollution could be two. Miss Lee's class, what do we think? So many of you.
I think maybe plastic.
Plastics, we've got. Awesome, guys. Sea level rising, coral bleaching coming in on the chat. Daphne, we've covered the gamut, I think.
Oh, I would say we've covered so many challenges. And really, what it says to us is that there are a lot of challenges that the ocean is facing. Does that mean that there's nothing we can do to make a difference? No, there's so many things that we can do. And there's a lot of hope for the ocean and a lot of positive changes that are happening for life there. We at Ocean Wise are focusing on 3 challenges to try and have a bigger difference. So we're focusing on climate change, ocean pollution, and overfishing. But as you can see in my image here, really at the center of it all is all of us. We all have a lot that we can do to help either individually, as a class, or as a community as a whole. We're all connected and there's a lot we can do together. But I'm actually joining you from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So I am joining you from right next to what we sometimes like to call the Emerald Sea. Gets really green during certain times of the year from all the plankton that grows. But being in Vancouver right now, I actually am on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. And I'm really grateful that I'm able to live, learn, play, and join you all today from their lands. And as we go through the program and as we go through life, I want us to really think about how we can better respect the land, water, and sky around us as they have since time immemorial. There's so much that we can learn from people that have lived on these lands for thousands and thousands of years, taking care of it. So if you're joining from someone's territory today, and I'm sure most of us are, I'd love for you to share in the chat. But it is also time for us to dive in to our topic today. I'm going to get my scuba gear on, and it is time for us to dive into squid. That's right. We're going to look at one of my favorite creatures today, and we're going to get to look at the inside and the outside. So, my friends, I want to get us started with one of my favorite squid that live a little bit deeper in the ocean than others.
That's interesting. Is that like a squid with things? That's an octopus. Yeah, that's an octopus buried in the sand, looking at us. Yeah.
Whoa! Hey, you think we can get near it?
That's.
Oh, there he goes. Dumbo octopus. Or no.
Go ahead, zoom.
Can't get away. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. An octopus or squid?
So I'll pause the video here, but really, hopefully you got to see this beautiful bobtail squid. Now, it might look sort of like an octopus to some of us because it has more of a sort of a shorter body than some squid we might be more familiar with. But I really wanted us to see how it was moving. So I'll play it for a few more seconds and share with someone next to you how it's moving.
That is a squidopus.
An octopus or squid?
That is a squidopus.
Now, there are some amazing squid that we see around the world, and all of them are going to move in very similar ways, and we're going to find some of those body parts that help them move like that on our squid today. But there are some amazing adaptations or body parts that help these animals survive. So I'm going to show you a few pictures here, and I want you to just share with someone next to you or think to yourself, what are some body parts or maybe behaviors that it does that will help it survive? You can see some of them are going to be small, like the bobtail squid. Some of them are going to be huge. We've got a giant squid next to a human here, and we've got a really, really long deep sea squid as well. But you know what? These squid, I want us to get to this dissection. So real quick, I wanted to introduce the group of animals that squid belong to, and that is the cephalopods. These really, really smart animals that live in the ocean. We've got the squid, the octopus, the cuttlefish, and the nautilus that make up this group. So we're going to take a look at one of those animals today. Now, I want us to take a look at our proper squid already. Now, first things first, I want you to share with someone next to you. We can even get some suggestions from some of the classes if we'd like. What are some body parts that you're seeing? What are some things that help them survive?
Okay, so some of our StreamYard classes, I know you guys just have the chat, our YouTube classes. If you guys want to type in the chat some body parts, but Miss Kendi's class, if you guys want to answer, what are some body parts of our squid here?
Tentacles.
Tentacles. Very cool. All right. Mr. Shadow's class, any body part thoughts?
Yeah, run up there,
Run.
The little I forget what they're called, but the little suction
Suction cups. Yes, very good. Okay. We've got eyes. Miss Edie's class noted beak, which I think is a really cool thing because a lot of our students might not have known beak. Very, very cool. Miss Lee's class, any other body parts before we dive in with our dissection?
The little flappy part on the top of its head.
The little flappy part.
Ooh, yes.
I like that very much. When in doubt, if you don't know the specific name, it's good to just describe something in a way that indicates what it is. Very cool.
You know what? Observations are a huge part of science. So there you go. Describing a body part. That's science right there.
Awesome. Yes, take us in. I'm excited to learn more.
All right. Well, we pointed out a whole bunch of different body parts here. Now, those flappy parts are one of the first ones I wanted to talk about. And you might have noticed even bigger ones on that bobtail squid, and it was using those to help it swim and move around. So these are actually fins. So we're going to have those fins right there, helping them move around. And then we have this really nice large section of body. And you can share with someone next to you, what kind of shape is this main section of the body? You might say shape. You might say it looks like something that you've seen before.
Someone says it looks like a rock. I don't know.
Well, the color definitely might look like rocks near where you live. I saw somebody asking why it's gray before. We'll take a closer look at that in a bit. But the shape here, if we pretend the fins aren't there, we see a nice point at one end, and we're going to see it gets a bit wider and tapers a bit again. So you might call that a long triangle or a cone shape, sort of. I like to call it more of a torpedo shape. So really nice and fast through the water. Now, this part of the body is going to be surrounded by this big muscle wall. We call that the mantle. Now, if you have ever eaten squid before, that mantle, that kind of wall around the body there is one of the main parts that you're going to eat. That's what those rings would have been. But there's many other parts that we're going to look at here. We've got, I heard tentacles. Does anyone have a different word for any of the kind of appendages, I would call them, sticking out?
What do we think? Miss Edie's class, by the way, got mantle before you said it, which I think is really impressive because I certainly didn't know mantle when I was in grade 5. So
Nice.
All right. Miss Siva's class, if you guys want to unmute and turn on your camera too, I'll happily come to you guys. Miss Marshall, same deal. If you guys want to unmute, whoever jumps in first, I can come to you guys. Any thoughts on a word other than tentacle? Mr. Shadid's class, I'll come to you guys because you guys are good with your mic on. What do we think? I heard it. Arms. Way to go. Yes.
Nicely done. So we have heard tentacles and arms. Now, big question is, you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down for this answer. Are all of these the same? Ooh, it's a hard one. I see some ideas of maybe no. You're right. If we take a closer look, I might try and zoom in a bit here. We will see some of these are going to have those wonderful suction cups someone mentioned along the entire length of them, whereas some of them, 2 of them it looks like, only have suction cups on the very ends. So we actually have 2 different kinds of appendages here. We have maybe some arms and some tentacles. Any ideas you can show with your fingers? How many arms do you think we have?
What do we think? Oh, someone's got it in the chat. How many arms? Miss Edie's class came so prepared today. They say 8. I think that might be correct. I think
that is correct. If you think of an octopus has arms, those suction cups the whole way, and they have 8 of them. Whereas the squid is going to actually have 2 extra that are tentacles. So they have both arms and tentacles. The tentacles are going to be ones that they actually use to kind of shoot out and grab their prey and bring it back towards all those arms before they eat it. So really great for hunting with. All right. Now we've got all those arms and those 2 tentacles. So I have a joke for you. It's a terrible joke. Are you ready? How many tickles does it take to make a squid laugh?
How many tickles, Daphne?
How many tickles, my friends? It is tentacles. 10 tickles, my friends. I have all the dad jokes, don't you worry. But I'll have us continue on. I'm sure you all got a good kick out of how not funny I am. I love it. We have another large part of the body right here, kind of connecting those arms and tentacles to the mantle and the rest of the body. You can just point on yourself. What part of the body would this be on you? That's right. That's that head. So around this head, we also have two things to look at on the sides. Might be kind of hard to see here, but it's a little bit of a flap there. But we have 1, 2 eyes. That's right. And their eyes are actually quite large on their head. Seeing is very, very important for them for hunting. They are great hunters. But my friends, I told you I'd tell you more about the color before we go inside. And if we take a closer look, I'll zoom in again. You will notice it's not just one color. They've got all these little spots on them. Does anybody know what those are called or what they might do?
Ooh, this is a bit of a tough one.
I know.
We'll see. Any thoughts on the chat anywhere? Grade 6s, grade 8s, Miss Kennedy's class. Miss Kennedy, if you guys have a thought, little spots.
Are they touch sensors?
Touch sensors, very cool idea. I like that very much. Okay. Mr. Shatter's class?
Do they sense motion?
Sense motion. Okay, so we've got touch sensors, motion sensors. These are what they do. Does anyone know what they're called? I know this is a bit of a tricky one. Miss Edie's class, you guys have been nailing mantle and stuff. If you want to type in the chat, no one else is diving in. Spots for changing color, Miss Edie's class.
Yes. So they do have lots of nerves around their body, just like us, for feeling and sensing things around them. But all these spots are actually color changing cells. We call them chromatophores. So it might not work here, but sometimes if I'm kind of pressed down on them, it'll actually make these cells bigger and it will start to change the color of that area. So you'll see it might look a little bit darker. It didn't work super well today. That's okay. But I will have a video for you to show you how this works. So let me just share my other screen because, I'll show you. I do have an octopus video here with all those suction cups. I'll show you first because everyone loves an octopus. They're beautiful, majestic creatures.
I will admit, so you shared a picture a minute ago of all the cephalopods, and I love octopus, I love squid, but all the other ones are my favorite more. Like nautilus, cuttlefish, win out for me. They're so cool, and so few people know them. I hope everyone takes a chance to check out all 4 of our cephalopod groups when you're done today's broadcast. 100%.
And I will say, we're going to take a look at some of the color changing capabilities of squid and octopus here in a second, but cuttlefish really, they take the medal. They are the most amazing at it. Now, if we were able to take a closer look at the skin of this squid while it was alive, you would actually see all of these chromatophores growing and shrinking to change the color that you're seeing. So if you wanted to with your body, you could get yourself really, really small, and then you can make yourself really, really big, and then really, really small, and really, really big. That is just like chromatophores. Kind of like if we tried to do artwork with circles or spots, we'd have to put a bunch of red spots to make something look red, or we'd have to put a lot of blue spots to make something look blue. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're kind of painting with their cells. So super, super cool. And this is what it's going to look like in action. So I didn't have a squid video, unfortunately, but I do have this beautiful one of an octopus. And they not only can change their color, but also the texture of their skin. So we have an octopus, and then where did it go? I have to say, I'm really glad that I can't really play hide and seek with an octopus because I think that I would definitely be losing. So we can watch that one more time. Amazing. So they can do this super, super quickly. It's really, really impressive, I think. But you know what? I think it's time to take a look at these ones on the squid one more time. We do have some darker sections on top, and we actually have less of them are sort of lighter colors on the bottom. Does anybody know why the squid would be darker on top and lighter on the bottom?
There's a cool word for this. I don't know if anyone knows. There's one. Miss Lee's class, we got a student with her hand up. What do we think?
I think because I feel like it's darker on the back because sometimes, like, if they're flipped on the top and
Yeah.
they float up to the surface, then like it's darker, so it fits in.
Hey, way to go. What a great answer.
Woohoo! You've
yeah.
got it. So yeah, we like to call this counter shading. So if you think of a lot of fish, or if you think of whales, a lot of them are lighter on the belly, darker on the top. Sharks and many other animals in the ocean have this as well. And so even the squid has that. And you're right, it looks darker when we look down in water. So they want to be darker on top. But if we're underneath them, looking up towards the sky, the sun is going to make it look really bright. So they want to be a lighter color on the belly. Now, I'm going to have us flip over our squid. And I'm going to do one more thing before we actually cut it open. I want to show you one of the body parts that helps them with eating. And someone mentioned it before. It's going to be a black color. Do we have a guess as to what that could be? What do we think?
Anyone in the chat? Miss Lee's class, you guys got it right last time. What's the thing that we talked about that they eat with? Do they have a jaw? Do they have teeth like this? I don't think so.
I think a beak.
A beak. Way to go. Yes.
That is right. We've got that beak inside. So, of course, it's going to be near the head. And it's, in this case, going to be right in between all of those arms and tentacles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my handy dandy tweezers. And I'm going to try and pull it out. Now, usually I would have a helper do this. So it might take me a moment. But I'm going to try and pull part of the beak out so we can take a look. And then I want you to compare it to the giant squid beak I have. Oh, there's part of it. Oh, a little gooey. So I have half of our beak here. I'll show you a little bit better. Right? So there it is. You see it on my finger. It's, oh gosh, it's very sticky. Woo. Oh goodness. All right, there we go. So if you see that one, pretty small. But check out this one from a giant squid. Like there's a bit of a size difference here, my friends. Pretty cool. So made of the similar, all the same materials. It's just that that giant squid beak is much, much larger. And one of the things that makes these really, really strong is chitin, a really strong material, one of the strongest in nature that makes it super, super strong and durable. All right, my friends, but it is time for us to actually take a look inside the squid. But for me to do that, I need you first, while I'm doing it, to give me a guess. Do you think this animal is a male or a female? Some species of animals, they might be both at the same time or have both reproductive parts, called a hermaphrodite. In this case, in squid, usually they are separate sexes. So they will have either male or female reproductive organs.
So Miss Edie's class says male. I don't know what they're basing that on, but I like that they were so willing to chime in. Miss Kennedy's class, what do we think? And maybe why? I want to unmute.
What do we think?
Male. We think it's a male squid. Okay. I don't know why you guys all think this. This is so interesting. Usually people are more reluctant to chime in with it. I like this question today.
I will say with squid, you can't necessarily see on the outside. Now, I'm going to cut through the squid right now. So if you don't want to watch this part, you can take a look away and I'll let you know when it's done being cut, okay? So I'm going to cut through and I'm just going to cut carefully with my tips facing upward so I don't cut anything inside. So you want to look at that. I'm going to just cut all the way along to the top. It's almost like I'm going to prepare some calamari. All right. Now, here we have our beautiful squid. I'm done cutting, so you can take a look. We have this beautiful squid, and inside it's kind of hard because I think part of the stomach or part of the kidney might have kind of discolored some of it, so it might look a little bit different than other times. But the reproductive organs are actually towards the top. Now, it looks a bit pinky today. It's not blood, actually. It's just from a little bit of other stuff. But up here is where we're going to see either eggs or sperm from a male. So eggs from a female, sperm from a male. The sperm is going to be more of a white color the eggs are going to be more of a yellowy orange, and they're going to look kind of speckled because there's a bunch of eggs inside. In this case, what do you think we have? I know it's a bit kind of hard to see, but what color do you think that is?
Mr. Shannon's class?
Yeah.
Not a color, but I like it.
Yeah, I love it. Yes, so we do have a male. We have some sperm up here now. Depending on how ready he is to reproduce, he might have more or less. And we also know because a female has a really big white gland right here, usually called the nidamental gland. And it's what's actually going to kind of encase a bunch of her eggs together. So she'll have thousands and thousands of eggs that she's laying, but she'll lay them in kind of big clusters. So I'll actually share my other screen here. And you can see that's what those egg casings would look like. There's, hundreds of eggs in each one of these kind of sausage-like tubes. And sometimes around British Columbia and other areas of the world, you might actually see some of these wash up on shore. You're like, what is that? Is that a worm? What is that? It's actually sometimes some of those egg casings. So you can see I've got a baby squid here too, but really we've got reproduction leading to those eggs, to babies, to adults. But let's get back to our squid, why don't we? We have figured out that we have a male squid here. Let's see if you can identify any of the other body parts. Maybe you can think of what they have that's similar to you.
All right. Again, Miss Siva, Miss Marshall's class, if you guys want to unmute, I'm happy to come to you guys if you want to answer or chime in with anything. Miss Lee's class, what do we think? Any parts that you want to note that are like parts you might have?
No.
Could you just a spine?
A spine? Do we have a spine in this guy? That's interesting. Do you see it?
That is a great question. And actually, I will show you what might be similar. I'll get some other ideas after we cover this one, but you might not have noticed, but the squid actually does have a bit of rigidity. So I can't just fold it in half completely right now.
Yep.
It has something a bit hard, and it's actually at the back here. So I might be able to kind of pull it out.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what this is? It's not actually a spine. It's not made of bone. It's actually made out of that chitin, like we talked about in the beak.
Yeah.
But does anybody know what this is going to be that I'm going to pull out here?
Sort of clear, flat cartilage is what Miss Edie mentioned. So chitin, we talked about what he was made of. Does anyone know the name of this? Mr. Shattuck's class, any idea the name of what this might be? No idea.
All right.
Honestly, I used to work at an aquarium. I did not know this till I started working at an aquarium. So this is a tricky one. No one's chimed in with this yet, Daphne.
All right. Well, let's pull it out, and then I'll let you know what it's called. Now, I can actually see it sticking out a little bit at the end here as well. So it goes all the way the length of the body here, or the mantle. I'm going to pull it out. So if you don't want to watch, you can look away. But here it comes. Oh, it's in 2 pieces today. Bummer. Oh, well. So I've got, just pulling out my other piece here. There we go. We got our 2 pieces here. They would be together as one. I must have broken it earlier on accident. But this is actually the pen. So pen, like as if you were writing. We don't use these for writing though, unfortunately. But that's going to give them just enough structure or rigidity or kind of stiffness that they can go straight in the water, because now they're super floppy. And that's not going to help them swim in a straight line. They're going to go all which ways. All right. It looked like we had some other suggestions for body parts that we were looking at. I'll do the ones in the chat, and then we can go back to any ideas in the class.
Awesome.
I see heart was a suggested one. And one thing we might have noticed when we looked inside is, I know it looks a bit pinky today, but there's not actually any red blood. Do squid have blood? I'll have you vote with thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
Well, let me see. I'm looking at our classes. Thumbs up. Oh, a lot of thumbs down. Thumbs down. Pretty much. Yeah, okay. A lot of interesting.
It is a tricky one because you don't see that red blood like we have, but not all animals have red blood. Squid are some of those animals. So yes, they have blood, but it is not red. It's actually more of kind of a bluey green color, sometimes looking a bit kind of yellowy once it has touched oxygen. Now, it's going to be a bit harder today because we're a bit discolored. Sorry about that, friends. But really, we're looking for kind of an area that would be kind of that color of that blood. Usually it'd be a bit more kind of a bluey yellow. But my big question to you is, how many hearts are we looking for? So you can do show of fingers in class.
1 heart. Nothing has more than 1 heart, Daphne. You're being ridiculous. How many hearts? Miss Kennedy's class, how many hearts do we think?
3.
3. Okay. 3. It's like the Shrek thing at the beginning. Never mind. As a reference to the other thing.
Yes,
How many
so we
hearts?
have 3 hearts. One that's going to work kind of like our heart and pump blood all around the body. And then each of the gills has a heart for itself as well, to make sure that there's lots of oxygen, passing through those gills. So, question, to help us find these hearts, we're going to need to find the gills. Any ideas where those could be? I'll give you a few seconds to just kind of from your seat, you can point on the screen. We're not going to run up to the screen or anything crazy like that.
Well, don't throw it in as an option then, Daphne. Jeez.
So we are seeing some gills. They're kind of hard to see here, but they're actually kind of sticking out from the body. I sort of pulled them out earlier. They would look really, really feathery underwater, kind of like feathers from a bird. And they're super high surface area to get lots of oxygen from the water. But if we take a look where those gills are attached to the rest of the body up top, we might be able to find some hearts. Now, I'm going to zoom in a bit to see if this will help us. Let's see. Oh, too far. Too far. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Better.
That looks great.
So we do have, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell today, but I believe that this kind of section right in here, or actually this one probably right here, is going to be one of those kind of branchial or gill hearts. It's kind of hard to see sometimes today. It's really hard. But I think there's another kind of branchial heart right here for the other gill. And then the systemic heart, the main one, is going to be somewhere in here. I think it's kind of underneath something, but it should be right in there. So 1, 2, 3 hearts. Well done, everyone. And then anything else that we notice or things that we have on our body that we think the squid might have?
What do we think? Let's see. Miss Lee's class, you guys got hands up? What do we think? Arms. We've got brain coming in the chat as well. You guys are so engaged today. I love you classes. You're doing such a great job. Mr. Chatter's class, what do we think? Stomach. Okay, Miss Kennedy, what do we think?
Lungs.
Okay, tell us, Daphne.
We have some great guesses there. And I will say some of the items that or the body parts that we have, a squid actually doesn't need, or it has something else that kind of serves a similar purpose. So if we think of our arms, the squid's going to have, those arms that it has down here as well to help it. They may work a little bit differently. But even though they have something called the same thing, does sort of a similar idea, other parts might not be as similar. So we think of ourselves as having lungs to help us get oxygen. You can take a deep breath in, let it out. But for a squid, those gills are what it's going to use instead because it's getting oxygen from the water like a fish. But I did hear some other suggestions. Stomach, as well as I can't remember the other one. But stomach, yes. And I saw a question of what is the big white thing from Miss Edie's class. That is actually what the stomach is going to be. So this kind of shiny part here, that is a full stomach. I'm not going to cut it open because it's going to smell really gross for me. But that is going to be that full stomach that it has. Sometimes they're smaller because it didn't have as much in there. And I will show you, there's a bit of kind of, almost looks kind of like some brains or something, but that's actually part of the digestive system. So kind of like your intestines for absorbing more of that nutrients. And then, was there another one that somebody suggested, Jesse?
We had lungs in there. I think there's been so many. We have the most engaged classes of all time. I'm almost forgetting. I'm sorry.
All good. Well, I'll move on to something else here, and I will do a different question. There is a kind of a narrow part right here that's really shiny. almost looks kind of black. Any ideas what that could be?
So a few people have been hinting at what this might be without knowing it throughout the broadcast in the chat.
I think so.
Mr. Shattuck's class, what do we think the shiny thing might be?
Brainstem.
Brainstem. Okay, we've got brain. Miss Edie's class in the chat might be on to something. Miss Kennedy's class, do you guys want to chime in? What do we think? So yeah, all teachers, feel free to leave your mics unmuted, because then we can come to you much faster. There we go. I'll leave you guys for a second. Miss Lee's class, what do we think?
The ink sac.
Ink sac. I think they got it.
That is correct. We've got that ink sac there. Now, we've seen most of the parts of this animal so far on the inside, so I'm okay to open it up a little bit now. Now, sometimes if I open this up, it'll be really obvious to see the ink. Sometimes it won't be as obvious. So we'll see what happens today. If you want to look away, now's your chance. I'll let you know when I'm done. I'm just going to do a bit of a cut into there. Hopefully not get into the stomach. And hopefully we can kind of get some of that ink out. So I'm done cutting. You want to take a look. And I'm going to be kind of silly, and I'm going to use part of the pen and try and use it as a pen. And we'll see if I can, right here. So you can see it does sort of work. Now, there are lots of products that actually will use squid ink as a dye. A lot of the time you'll see like black pastas, and that's actually dyed with squid ink. There are some inks for pens that you can get as well, but they don't last as long because it's a natural ink. It can kind of start to decompose or get a bit smelly sometimes. But I think that's super cool. It dissolves really easily in water, so they don't actually need to use that much to make a big smoke screen to get away, kind of like a magician. Instead, they just need a little bit. They don't need to use it all, and it'll create a bunch of, a really big black cloud for them. So I think that's one of the really cool adaptations or things they have to help them survive. And if they are using that ink to get away, one of the other body parts they're going to use is this one right below it. They're actually going to shoot that ink through this hole. Anybody know what this one's called? It uses jet propulsion through this, just like a jet on an airplane. Or you might even think of if you take a hose and it has water spraying out of it and you've got a big hole right there, but then you put your thumb covering almost all of the hole. You create a super tiny hole, like at the end here, and all that water is going to go really far and really fast. That's what they're doing through this part of the body. Do we have a guess? Anyone?
Anyone have a guess? Let's see. Miss Lee's class, what do we think?
Do we know?
No.
One.
Leo, what do you think?
What that is?
Yeah.
I think that it's probably that's probably like where it comes out to the ink. Well,
Ink
that's
comes
where it comes out. What is it called?
What's her name? By the way, I will say, I'm so glad you guys are willing to answer things and not necessarily know the answer. It really makes a big difference when kids are willing to try with stuff. So, any idea? It is a tricky one.
I might need to help us out with this one. This one I think is really tricky.
Yeah. Okay, Daphne, tell us what this guy is. And we've got about 5 to 10 more minutes tops for this, just so you know.
Yeah. So this one is going to be the siphon is what it's called. And so that siphon is where they're going to use that jet propulsion, that they're going to pull a bunch of water into the mantle and they're going to squeeze it out through that siphon. And that's where they can do a really, really quick getaway. So a quick launch of their body, but it's a lot of energy. So they're going to use those fins for most of their swimming. Now, there are like 1 or 2 other things that we can explore within the squid, but I really want to make sure we have time for questions. So if there are any questions that folks have, I'd love to hear any of those now.
Fantastic. And what we can do too is if people have more questions after the broadcast, some of you have been sharing them in the chat, we can make sure you get those answers as well. You have our email address at exploringbytheseatyourpants. We can find all that for you. But let's head to Mr. Shattuck's class first. We'll take a little bit of a round of questions and go from there. Hey.
So from the video that where that octopus blended in.
Yeah.
Can squids also do that?
Ooh.
Great
Nice.
question. So they can't they can't change the texture of their skin necessarily like the octopus and cuttlefish can in most cases, but they are going to be able to change the color. So, and sometimes you'll see lots of squid schooling together, kind of like fish, and they might even kind of be changing their colors together. A lot of the time around mating, a lot of these animals will kind of do certain color changes to attract a mate or a partner. So
Awesome.
great question.
Great question. All right, Miss Kennedy's class, if you guys want to come on in, unmute your mic, you're good to go.
Do squids have brains?
Squid have brains.
Oh, this is a great question, and it might be something we need to go explore in a minute. I might take one more question before we go explore it, though.
All right, our brain question awaiting. We'll head to Stonebridge, Miss Eva's class. Welcome in, guys. Hey.
What's the biggest squid ever recorded?
Biggest squid on all time, Daphne.
Oh, that, I don't know that I actually know the answer to that. That's a really good question. I will say that that like the giant squid get pretty big already. They get about 13 meters or 43 feet.
Which is
so
crazy.
Already that's pretty big.
Yeah, so our by the way, our longest is the giant squid, as Daphne said, about 43 feet, which is ridiculous. The heaviest is the colossal squid, which I'm pulling this up as we speak. Largest known recorded mass is over 1,000 pounds for a squid, making it the largest invertebrate on the planet by a significant margin. Great question, guys. All right, Daphne, you had a brain thing you wanted to show us, and then I'll head to Miss Lee's class for question 2.
All right, well, let's dive into this brain here. Let me just switch what I'm on. There we go. If we take a look, we're going to come on in here. Right where that mouth is, if we were to follow that, we'd actually go towards the stomach. So one of my favorite facts about squid and octopus and cuttlefish and nautilus, all of the cephalopods, is that their brain is a bit of a weird shape. Any ideas what shape their brain would be? Anyone?
All right, how about Miss Lee's class? We're going to come to you guys for a question anyway in a second. So what do you think the brain is first? What shape is the brain?
Can't Daphne cut open the stomach and not to breathe with her nose and mouth?
We've had a bunch of people keen on the stomach, Miss Edie's class too. Well, while we think about that, Daphne did mention earlier that the stomach's pretty gross to cut open. Not exactly the most pleasant thing, sort of gets everywhere. So we might...
Yeah, and I'll say every time I've tried cutting open one of the stomachs, it looks exactly the same, and it really just looks like a bunch of like pink paste. Pretty much because they're probably eating lots of krill and plankton, and it's already digested, so it kind of is like a goo.
Okay, pink goo, we got it. But
Yeah.
Miss Lee's class, do you have a thought of what shape the brain might be? Is it like ours, like two fists together, or what do you think? Is it a square?
I think it might be. I think it might be like the shape of the heart.
The shape of the heart, sort of like a thing. We got octagon is from Stonebridge Public School. Oval from Miss Edie's class. You've got circle. I like these guesses, guys.
These are great. So it's really hard to actually cut in and see the brain properly. I mean, you wouldn't be able to see this anyways, but the shape is actually one of my favorite baked goods.
Tidbit.
You can see that.
What do we got? It looks like a donut.
It is a donut. They have a donut brain. So their esophagus, or kind of their throat, is actually going to go right through that brain. That means they better chew their food well. Otherwise, I mean, I thought brain freezes were bad. Imagine if you got a little chunk of food stuck in the middle of your brain. Woo! Not fun. Now, I am not going to try and do the proper brain itself, but there's a large gathering of nerves around the mouth. So would you guys like to see what that looks like? It kind of looks like as if it was a brain.
I think we would. Sounds fun to me.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pull out the rest of the beak, and then this one might look kind of gross, so you can look away if you want. I'm going to try and pop this section out, kind of like a pimple. So some of you might not be old enough yet to have had to deal with pimples, but pretty much. We've got kind of like a pimple here that I'm kind of pushing out. And this is, hopefully you aren't getting the sound effects. All right, we have all pulled out. Like, it's got a little bit of kind of tissue around it, but there's kind of a large, kind of whitish ball here, and that's called the buccal mass. It's kind of like this big collection of nerves, sort of like a bit of a brain, around the mouth area. So a lot of muscle in there as well. But what you can really see is that esophagus and part of the brainstem as well, kind of going through there. So that's kind of what that brain might look like.
Fantastic. Daphne, we are at the 46-minute mark. I know some of our classes need to go for lunch, but I want to make sure and stress that if you do have any additional questions, folks, you can email us at ebtsoyp@gmail.com, and we'll get you those answers. We'd love to keep your excitement for Squid going, and I'll share a bunch of resources too from Daphne and the Ocean Wise team, so you can get excited. But is there a final message you want to share about Squid, about the dissection that you shared with us today, before we wrap up in a minute?
There is, and there's so many things I could talk about today, but one I'll talk about because I do have what is actually an item of seafood I purchased from the grocery store for our squid today, is that there are so many ways for us to have a more sustainable life. And Ocean Wise, one of the ways we're trying to help everyone be more sustainable is to be able to choose sustainable foods. And in this case, we're focusing on seafood. So if you go to a grocery store or if you go to a restaurant and you see this Ocean Wise logo, it means that we've done homework for you. We've deemed that this is a more sustainable or a smarter or healthier choice for the ocean for years to come. So that just helps you make an easier choice about what you might want to eat. Now, if you don't eat seafood, that's also great, but not all of us have that option. Some of us might need to eat that to get enough protein in our lives. So I'm super pumped on all the interactivity and everything that everyone did today. If you wanted to scan this QR code, we do have a fun kind of quiz on what ocean animal you are, if you wanted to. But if there's any last time for questions or anything, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Daphne. And again, we will wrap up pre-questions there, but if people do want to share online, please do get in touch and find out what animal you are. I don't even need to do the test. I know I'm a great white shark because they're the best. But what we're going to do, Daphne, as you well know, is I'm going to bring in our live classes to say a big thank you and farewell. So Miss Siva's class, grade 6s, Mr. Shattuck, Miss Lee's class, and Miss Edie, I know you're at home, but share with us, scream and yell in your class. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.